Here come the $3 trillion deficits. Last week, stocks fell the most in a month on news the big, beautiful budget passed the House. A bill that will, thanks to rhinos in Congress, add a big, beautiful $5 trillion to the national debt. With Republicans like this, who needs Democrats? The first market to hit was bonds, which always get nervous when governments can't pay their bills. The 20-year bond broke the psychologically important level of 5%, a level last seen in April of 2007, as in right before the financial crisis. Last week I mentioned the collapse in Japanese bonds as their government admits they can never again afford tax cuts. America is now one big beautiful step behind. Spending will never drop again, no matter which party is in charge. So the background here is federal spending jumped during COVID at rates we normally see in world wars, going from $4.9 trillion in 2019 to nearly $7 trillion in 2021. That quadrupled deficits from under $1 trillion in 2019 to almost $4 trillion in 21. The COVID orgy, of course, was bipartisan, but the cage fight was always what happens after the crisis. As in, does the deficit return to Earth, or is that power grab permanent, with a permanent deficit big enough to gobble up the entire republic? Now, with Biden in power, there was still hope. Maybe, just maybe, if we hire Republicans, they'll actually cut the federal government, like they've been promising for like a century. Alas, it was not to be. Even before the big, beautiful budget, we were looking at deficits of $22 trillion over the next 10 years. The House just slapped another $5 trillion on that, probably $6 trillion when the gimmicks come clean, which brings us to nearly $30 trillion of deficit in the next 10 years alone. It's almost $3 trillion per year, and it would nearly double the national debt. Of course, that's if we're lucky. Debt interest alone is on track for $1.8 trillion a year. And of course, if we hit recession, all bets are off. The deficit will be 4 to 5 per year. So this is what knocked bond markets, and it will keep knocking bond markets harder and harder, because just as important as $3 trillion deficits is who did it, the party of fiscal restraint. If Republicans are pushing $3 trillion deficits and Dems are worse, there truly is no hope left. So what's next? Brought to you by Unchained.com. We are entering a crisis decades in the making, starting with the FDR deep state and the Federal Reserve that feeds it like a cancer. We're now in a horse race between Fed and Treasury printing money to kick the can at the cost of inflation and a crashing dollar, versus bond markets where the so-called bond vigilantes stand ready to deliver righteous justice and double-digit bond yields on a Congress that cannot control itself. We already saw a warning shot last Wednesday with the ugliest bond auction this year, sparking that stock crash. History tells us paper money always ends the same, with runaway inflation and crushing government. The question is, can prudent leaders delay the inevitable, buying us a couple more decades like the 1950s or the 1990s, or do they push us headlong off the cliff? A new episode of the podcast just dropped. Search Peter St. Onge wherever you enjoy your podcasts. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.